Good day, learners. You are welcome to Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. You are welcome to biology class. And in our class today, our topic is reproductive system in flowering plants.
Eko Learners Support, a support program of the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education for WAEC and NECO candidates.
We have plants all around us. We'll classify plants that they reproduce sexually as sexually, but when a plant reproduces sexually, relatively in flowering plants, we will be looking at a special feature which they use, or structure, or organ, which they use for the purpose of reproduction. Our learning objective includes the following. By the end of the lesson, you'll be able to mention the structure used by plants for reproduction. You'll be able to state all the parts of a flower. You have been admiring the beauty of flower, but biologically, you begin to appreciate it more and more. You will be able to discuss the functions of the parts of a flower. And by the end of the day, you'll be equipped to identify the male and the female parts of a flower. Let's move on with the lesson. The structure of a flower. Flower is that organ, that structure that is used by plants for the purpose of reproduction. Flower is the organ used by plants for reproduction. And so from the introductory parts, we have the flower as parts in a plant which is considered to be brightly colored. I have a flower here. This is just one out of several. You know, we have many that have these bright colors. So the color in some flowers are always a point of attraction. So they are brightly colored. They grow at the end of a stem and survive for a short time. Once they accomplish their function, then they drop. Their actions are controlled by hormones and other systems. Flower is a cluster of modified leaves borne on shortened stem. A flower is considered to be what? A modified leaves that is often found on shortened stem. I have some flowers here. We look at these flowers, they are brightly colored, particularly this one that has some parts labeled. That shows the different parts that makes up a flower. If you look closely at it, we'll be looking at them as we progress with the lesson. We have pedicel, we have sepal, receptacle, we have a part called ovule, another one petal. We have this clustered together anther and filaments, which we call stamen. We have the pollen tail, we have stigma, we have style, the ovary that forms the female parts. So we'll be looking at the male part of a flower and the female part of a flower. Part of a flower. A flower is basically considered to have 4 floral parts. How many parts? 4 floral parts. 4 floral parts, or you call it whorls. These 4, they include the following. The first is the calyx, which we sometimes refer to as sepals. We have the next part of a flower called corolla, which we refer to as petals. We have another structure or part in a plant called androecium, which is the stamen. The stamen represents the male part of a flower. And we have the last floral part as a gynoecium, which is the carpel, that is the female part. So this stamen represents the male part, while the carpels or the gynoecium represent the female parts of a flower. All of these 4 flora, they are what is called receptacle, which provides a support for these floral parts. And this receptacle serves as the attachment point for the other floral parts. The receptacle continues to join to the plant on what is called the stalk. So basically, a flower is considered to have these features. We look at the calyx, which we mostly call sepals. Usually, when we look at calyx, they are small in size. They are small in size, and mostly, I'm underlining the word, mostly they appear green in color. We can have them as polysepalous, or we have them as gamosepalous. When these sepals, when they are called singly, separately, we call them polysepalous. But when they come like a cup, they are joined together to form what looks like a cup, we call them gamosepalous. What is the role of these sepals? Remember I said in most flowers they are green in color. So at that point, they carry out the function of protecting the other floral parts when they are still in what is called the bud, before they open up in the state of bud. They cover up, the sepals cover up that, the whole structure or part that forms the flower before it eventually opens up. Then the next part of the flower is called the corolla. The second one is called the corolla, which we mostly call petals. What is the significant thing about these petals? These petals, they are brightly colored. And because they are brightly colored, they get attracted easily to the eye. A number of times, when we bring them close to ourselves, we discover that they are scented. They have this sweet smell. And because they have this sweet smell, they contain a substance called nectar, a sugary substance, which makes them to be attractive to a number of insects and other animals, and even sometimes humans, like hibiscus that has yellow color. It has this juicy part. That juicy part is what is called the nectar. So these sepals or corolla that we say they are brightly colored and they have scent, the whole lot of this is what to attract insects to what is called the pollen grades, that the pollen that is there. So at this point, the insects that comes around, or the animals that they are attracted to these pollens, they are called pollinators. They are called pollinators. Like we mentioned concerning the calyx, corollas, they can be polypetalotes or gamopetalotes. In some instances, we have both the calyx, that is the sepal, and the corolla petals appearing as one. They look so much alike. At that point in time, we call the flower, that part of the flower, perianth flower, a perianth flower. We move on to consider the next important part in a flower, the gynoecium. Gynoecium is what? The female part. This is the female part. Which can be called pistil, or sometimes we call it carpel. Pistil or carpel. The gynoecium is a female part. And what does it do? It has different parts. It has stigma, it has style, and the ovary as the main part. Then the ovary contains what is called the ovule. Here I have a structure of a flower that is depicting the female part of a flower. I have a small part here. Here we can see the stigma, the style, ovary, and the oval. And collectively, these parts, they are called the pistil, or you call them the carpel. That is the female part. The stigma is polyreceptive parts of the pistil. Then we have the style as the stalk of the pistil. This one connects the stigma, connecting it to the ovary. When you look at this, here is the stigma, the upper part of the flower. This is the stigma. And we have this is the end part, the upper part of the flower, which is connected, a tube-like structure that runs from the stigma to where we have the ovary. This part is the ovary. You can see the name here, ovary. So the whole tube between the stigma and the stigma is what is called the style. So all of this makes up what is called the part of a female flower. We move on to the male part. The male part is called the androecium, which we mostly call the stamen. Androecium, the male part. In the practical class, we will take the pain to look at these structures one after the other, or as you go through your study material. Because for examination purposes, there are times that they will ask you to cut off the sepal, the petal, and they focus on the male or the female reproductive part. You need to know the number. So I want to give you this task. Collect some flowers in your area, identify the various parts, note their functions, get to know their number. They might give in a tabular form for the purposes of examination and ask you to state the number, maybe the color, and how they function, how they look like, and the function that they perform. So we are looking at the androecium. And the androecium is what? The male reproductive part of a flower. It has different parts. Looking at this, here is the anther and the filaments. But this is a bigger picture. And from here, we have the anther here. And the content of the anther is what is opened here. You can see the pollen grains. These pollen grains that you are seeing here is what is known as the gametes. The gametes, or you call it what? The sex cells. Because there are quite many. There are quite many. So we said the androecium, which is commonly referred to as what? The stamen. And it has two major parts. We have the anther, which is the uppermost part of that structure, and it has an elongated part or a slender part, which is called the filaments. That is the same thing that we have on this same structure. Here we can only see here the female part and the male part. You will see the male part, the anther and the filaments, just like a straight, not a straight line, like a line or a thread. The anther, what does it do? It produces pollen grains, which I refer to as what? The gametes or the sex cells. Sex cells, gametes, or the sex cells, which is required to fertilize the female gametes. Then we have the filament. What is the purpose of the filament? It's also to support the anther, is to hold it and ensure it goes up. Different flowers, they come in different ways. In another class, we'll be looking at all those variables very clearly or detailedly. Stamen is the male part. We have mentioned it. It has a filament. It has anther. And we did mention that stamen of flower may occur. It may be 3. In some cases, there may be many. Like when you look at flamboyant, when you look at a pride of Barbados, the stamen, they are usually 10, but always ending with what is called the anther. And it may be free, or sometimes they may be united. We have epipetalous. And what does that word mean? Epipetalous occurs when filaments of stamens are attached to petals. Epipetalous. The two words, petalous, combined with what? The male part of the flower. Now we move on to the content of the anther. Remember we said in the anther we have pollen grains. And what are the pollen grains? They are produced in pollen sacs. Pollen grains are produced in pollen sacs. They are fine. When you look at the color, they are fine yellow in color. They occur like powder. Detailedly, if we study it, we'll come to understand that the components of pollen grains, they consist of two parts or two coats. One is the outer part, the other one is the inner one. The outer one is called the exine, the one covering it, so the outer part. And we have the innermost part, which is called the intine. E for outside or outer, then intine for inner part. This one, we have them as these two coats or the gametes may occur producing two different nucleotes. We call them haploid generative nucleotes. Usually they are male. All of this will be studied when we are looking at pollination and how fertilization takes place. We looked at this earlier on the anther filament and the pollen grains. Now we quickly look at the female part, gynoecium. Gynoecium, we consider it as carpel, or we call it as pistil. We say it is the innermost part or the central part of the structure of the flower. It is surrounded by the male structure. We looked at that earlier on. And what else do we have here? This gynoecium consists of three important parts. The first one is the stigma. The second one is the style. And the last one is the ovary. This ovary is the one that now contains the female gametes, the gametes in females. The stigma is the sticky knob at the top of the pistil, or any flower is sticky. That is the one that receives the pollen grains during pollination. We have the style, which is a support which holds the stigma, connecting it to the ovary. Here we have the part called the ovary as having what? An enlarged bottom part. Here we have a structure of a carpel, gynoecium, or the pistil. When you look at this, we have the stigma up. So the whole of this, from this end to this part, represents the style. And this is the swollen part. You know, we said the bottom part is swollen. And this one is the oval. This is the oval. The oval is what? The female sex cell. The male sex cell is pollen grains. And when you look at the female sex cell, we call it, this contains the female sex cells. Based on what we have discussed today, we looked at flower as organ for reproduction. I want us to quickly attempt this question. I'll give you 2 minutes at the most to attempt it. There is a diagram here, or a drawn part, that you are to draw and label. Then you are to state the 4 parts of the female part of the flower. When you look, I'm sure you have listed the parts that we are meant to label. For proper understanding, let's quickly return to it. We have A, B, C, D. We have E, F, G, H, I, and J. I want you to observe something very closely. When you look at E, see what E is, See the part it put together. Then look at G. These two, look at them closely. They are saying something very important. So let's quickly go back to our answers. A is labeled as oval. B is the ovary. Check your own answers. Quickly compare it with what I have on the board. C is the star. D is the stigma. We have the E as gynoecium. Remember, the female part is the one that is the gynoecium. F is the anther. G is filament. H is sepal. I is petal. And J is androecium. So this is the female part. This is the female part, and this one is the male part. This one consists of F and G. What makes up the gynoecium consists of all of this. A, B, C, and D. They make up what constitutes the gynoecium. Sepal and petal, they carry out their own role alongside. So with this, we have come to the end of today's lesson. I'm sure you have learned something very important. For questions, for observations, you can reach us using the social media handle on display. Thank you.
Acing your WAEC and NECO examinations has been made easy by the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education with the Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO Candidates television program. Join seasoned teachers as they take you through these core subjects: mathematics, English language, physics, chemistry, and biology, targeting the exact syllabus of WAEC and NECO. Watch Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates on this station. Learners can also connect with Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates through these social media platforms to access more educational content and give their feedback. Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. Pass your examinations with flying colors.